2024 meeting of the AMATS Policy Committee to order. It is 1 o'clock. Do the roll call. I'm Sean Holland. I'm here. Mr. Downey.
Here.
Mr. Olds.
Here.
Here online. Mr. Littlefield is sitting in for Mr. Boland, or Dr. Boland, I should say.
Here.
Ms. Zalato.
Here.
That's all of us. So we have a quorum, a full committee of 5. Can you help us out with the public involvement announcement, please, Aaron?
Of course, AMATS committee meetings are open to the public. The public is provided an opportunity to comment at each meeting. Business items are first presented by a staff or consultant, and the committee is given an opportunity to ask questions. After the committee discusses a business item, the public is invited to formally comment. Each participant will have 3 minutes to speak on their topic. A couple of housekeeping items. If you're joining us virtually and you're not a member of the committee, please turn your camera off when you're not speaking on an item. If you're joining us by phone, to mute and unmute the microphone, press *6. Thank you. One quick note. We've been having some issues with our system used for microphones and videos, so we're trying a new system. So if anyone's online, if you could let us know how the system sounds during this meeting, or give us any input on if the audio cuts out or anything like that. So you may see us working through a couple of systems for various meetings. So thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Do we have approval of the agenda? Need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Zalatel, seconded by Mr. Littlefield. Any objections? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. For agenda item number 4, we have the minutes from our August 15th, 2024 meeting for approval. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Downey. Have a second.
Yeah, second.
Seconded by Ms. Zalatel. Any changes or discussion? Any objections to approving the minutes? Hearing none, the August 15th, 2024 minutes are approved. Action 5A, AMATS boundaries discussion. We probably don't need to spend as much time on this as the TAC did, but do you have a presentation?
Yeah, I'll do a quick just overview. So you all saw this back at the August meeting. The request by DOT was to relook at the boundary that AMATS approved back in February. There were some concerns on the southern portion on the Seward Highway and the impacts that could have on projects. Technical Advisory Committee reviewed this and recommended tabling it at the request of DOT for some additional time to review the information and provide a recommendation to AMATS. Just as a quick note, we do have a little bit of a timeline attached to this item. We are required, as you can see here in the memo, MPA boundaries, so that's us, of existing MPOs should be updated no later than the next scheduled MTP update after October 1st, which we are waiting for this boundary to start our next MTP update, or within 4 years of the designation of the 2020 urbanized area boundary, which is December 29th, 2026, whichever occurs first. So the MTP update would occur before the December one. So just a heads up there. And it is before you for action today. Thank you.
Your motion on?
Actually, can I ask a question? Or?
Oh, sure. Yeah, please.
So Aaron, is there like a general philosophy of what like I have all these dispersed maps, but like, is there a general philosophy of how we extended the boundary?
Yeah, look, can you go ahead and go to the boundary map? Yeah, can you scroll down? Can you go ahead? So on our boundary, I'll try and do the best I can without it. I didn't pull up the boundary map itself, but we have our urbanized areas that are required to be part of our boundary, and those are sent by the census designation. Outside of that, it's up to the MPO to make a determination of how far that boundary extends, and it's typically based on expected density or development as time goes on. There are opportunities to help with cleaning up any irregularities in the boundary. So there's a portion that just like juts in for no reason, and it doesn't encompass everything that the committee wants, or to include things that are part of future population growth or traffic or the economy. So for example, the Seward Highway would be part of the future population growth or the economy.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And there aren't significant changes here, right? There, there was a piece of the Seward Highway added, maybe a mile or two, some road up on the port, maybe, or parts of the port. And then it looked like maybe the old boundary split the Glen Highway in half going out towards Eagle River.
Yeah,
And so that encompasses that. And, you know, I raised that previously as a concern of not just for the Seward Highway, but any of those new roads. It's stacking those two, I guess, in my opinion, somewhat inefficient planning processes, you know, so it definitely takes a lot longer to deliver a project that's in those new roads. So I certainly, I could let it go, I guess, but I don't know if I'm allowed to make a motion or not, but my thought is that we would just extend it to where we're required to do so by the urbanized area. I'm probably completely out of order, and as far as the Robert's rules go.
Just a quick clarification about the boundary itself. So our boundary currently extends to 114 on the Seward Highway. If we cut any portion of that, the existing boundary, there needs to be real good justification for that, because FHWA wants there to be good justification for why you're removing parts of an existing boundary. If it's the portion you're talking about that was added as part of this update, that's, I think, a little more doable in the regard of what we're talking about here.
Did we expand this boundary because there were some different urbanized areas,
Yes.
maybe in the Eagle River or something?
So there were some smaller areas that we changed. So some small stuff here, as you can see at the beginning where it's following the park. There was this weird jag here. We extended it out to be matching up with the park. Similar out, that's out in Eagle River. And some smaller stuff for the Okludna area that was in our old boundary, but for some reason was removed. And then there's some other parts here where there's portions of roads. I believe this is Highland out to that area there. And then we have the River Park Road, another smaller road in there that, you know, parts of it are like pieces, small chunks are in the boundary. So we decided to smooth it out to make all of it within the boundary and make sense. Why are we doing a small little chunk here and everything else is ignored? And sorry, I'm just trying to go through real quick. And then, yeah, the Glen Highway one was a weird one. It looks like at the Highland interchange, the southeast quadrant was not part of the boundary, but the rest of it was. So the idea was to encompass the entire interchange in the boundary. And that makes sense. And then also have the Glen Highway that was, half of it was out of the boundary and make sure all of it's within the boundary. And then some smaller updates along there as well. And like the port one you said, the biggest change in staff's opinion is this southern one right here on the Seward Highway, where it's kind of the biggest addition to the boundary, where we go from 114 to 113.8 or 2, so 0.8 miles were added.
Mr. Littlefield.
I got a quick question through the chair. Did you not point out that you wanted this table to give DOT some more time to study this up? So the motion would be from this PC is to send it back to DOT and let them study it and then bring it back to us. Am I correct?
I'd say that's a potential motion.
That's a recommendation of the Technical Advisory Committee, is to table this until the next regularly scheduled TAC and PC meeting.
Again, my opinion is that I don't know that we need to push this down the road. That would be my opinion, is that we could maintain the old boundary except for where the urbanized areas have expanded and include those areas and make that the new boundary. But I'm not that passionate about it. So another potential motion there, but please.
Do we know how many road miles are added total?
Oh, it'd be a pretty minor amount.
I want an actual number because we're in a fiscally constrained program. How many miles are we adding?
I don't have that information.
You said from 114 to 1.
If it's just the Seward Highway portion that you're looking at, it's from 114 to 113.2, so 0.8 miles in that portion. But we have all those other smaller roads that are added that I don't have the numbers on.
Would you say it's fair? And I know I'm putting you on the spot, Aaron, 100 miles or less,
Significantly less than,
50 miles or less?
significantly less than that.
25 miles or less?
probably 25 miles or less.
Okay, great.
Even less than, it'd probably be even less for that. We would have to do an analysis and let you know.
That's all right. I'm just trying to get a sense of magnitude since we're in a fiscally constrained program.
It's pure speculation, but probably these additions wouldn't come out of any work on any of these additions wouldn't come out of the AMATS allocation. That might be a little bit far, but certainly maybe the superhighway.
If they're in the boundary.
Yeah, but they'd be STIP projects, so it would come out of the AMATS allocations.
It could,
Probably.
any of it could technically.
Yeah.
Especially if you're talking some of the other roads like the Highland or the River Road, the ones that are typically not DOT's focus based on past actions. I know things change in the future, but definitely for the Highland interchange one and the Glen Highway portion, those would typically be DOT portions. The rest of it, well, in the Seward Highway South, the rest of it would probably be more AMATS than DOT, depending on what the action is.
Are there questions or comments from the committee? No, we can open it up to the public. Any questions or comments from the public? Not seeing any. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve the boundaries as proposed.
Second.
Can I ask, is it appropriate to ask a clarifying question about the motion?
I think
Or should we second to discuss?
Second.
So please, Mr. Downey.
Well,
Oh,
Oh, what was your clarifying question?
I guess, is the motion to, it sounds like you are not making the motion that the TAC recommended. Your motion is to just approve what we already said and stick with that.
Yeah, I think there's sufficient information here. It's not an addition of substantial road miles. And the justifications for the boundaries as they've moved make good sense. So I don't know why a delay is necessary and we can just move forward. Especially if the MCP is being held up.
I don't think it's being held up yet.
Well,
It could be held up.
it's complicated because the STIP has held everything up. So once the STIP is done, it's delayed the funding from FY24 to FY25. So we're at like 6 to 8 months delay there. And I'll let you know that the FAST boundary has been held up by the governor since November. So
So what I would say is to the extent that the policy committee can get out of the way of the MCP, I would really recommend that we can just get out of the way of the MCP. So we're not one of the reasons anything is delayed.
Any more conversation? I think I can move to vote. I think I need to practice my Robert rules, review my Robert's rules, but I'm probably out of order again. Moved by Ms. Zelatel to approve as previously approved by the policy committee, seconded by Mr. Littlefield. I guess, are there any objections to approving the motion? I'm not hearing any. So I guess we'll stick with the revised AMATS, boundaries. All right. Action item 5B, the Fifth Avenue HSIP project. And I think Anna's going to be presenting. Aaron's going to present.
sorry, Anna's online, but she's home with a sick kid. So I'm going to try and fill in as best I can, and Anna will correct me if I'm wrong. So before you is a memo outlining information regarding an HSIP project. This project was before the committee at a joint work session on May 20th with the TAC and PC presented on by DOT regarding Fifth Avenue, Concrete Street to Carla. Can you go to the graphic real quick? This one, thank you. Hopefully you guys can see that, the graphic, what location we're talking about here. So this project is going to be looking at making some improvements in the area. And DOT is looking to get some feedback from AMATS on some of those improvements. And so those are outlined in the memo. I'm going to do a quick run through. One is a median option. They're looking at what kind of median option, and there are 2 links on there for the different type of landscaped median in the center. Then there's some fencing as well, some driveway consolidation, parking removal, ramp upgrades, signage to enhance pedestrians for the crossings at existing signals. And then a question whether lighting should be in the scope of the project or not, and that's dependent upon Merrill-Field support. The TAC reviewed this item and provided recommendations as follows. They recommend approval of B through G. So that's the fencing driveway consolidation. And then for option A, they recommended replacing it with, instead of doing the landscape median, there would be the Jersey barriers on either side of the vehicular facilities. Can you scroll down to the next one? To serve dual purpose of protecting both the non-motorized users and motorized users. The intervention proposed would be like that found along the northern section of Spenard Road. See the visual aid. I understand it's hard to see, but it's the like Jersey barrier. Go ahead and scroll down. We'll stay on that one. Thank you. Jersey barriers on the bottom with that wiring on the top. And the idea behind this, based on the TAC discussion, was to provide some more protection for the non-motorized users as they used that area. And additionally, they would like to see coordination with MOA Parks and Recreation, especially about the fencing for the MOA Parks property area. So this is before you as the policy committee today to review this information and forward your recommendations to DOT. Just as a reminder, AMATS does not approve these recommendations. They're just recommendations for consideration by DOT as they move forward on this HSIP project. And I do want to point out this is additional coordination from DOT, and as said at the TAC, it's very appreciated that there is this coordination going on before these improvements are just plopped down. So thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Ms. Zolotel.
So I have two questions. One is I can't get these links to open, so I can't see 1 versus 2.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I would just like to visually see them. The second question while we're working on that is, do we know if there's been any outreach to the community council or local area to get their feedback on which option they prefer, given that we've had a reaction from a different area of town on such improvements?
I don't know if Anna Boson may have to help answer the coordination with the community councils. I'm not sure at this time. Anna?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, Anna Boson, Central Region Traffic Safety Engineer. We have not reached out to the community councils yet. Over the summer, all the community councils were on break. And so fall is a time when those are starting up. So I'm more than happy to reach out and get feedback from them for our normal kind of public outreach process. And this was an opportunity to get, more of a discussion going early about the issues at this site in particular, because the ask was recognizing the pushback at other locations. We wanted to proactively kind of get in front of AMATS and talk about the nuances of this site. And so that was presented at the TAC. But by all means, we can certainly reach out to community council in this area. And I'll just point out, I also reviewed the capital improvement project list from the Fairview Community Council that had actually requested fencing and some of the other things that we have already made recommendations to incorporate.
Great, thank you. I think that, I think it's important to get this community council input before we take either of the 2 median options off the table personally. So, the rest I'm okay with, but I think the median options in particular really need to have that public feedback, both in terms of not just aesthetics, but the problem trying to be solved and what do they think as the primary users and people in that area. So I'll think about what kind of motion that might mean when we get to that part. Thank you.
We do have the median options up here on the screen. Apologize, the link is not working. This is the first median option. I hope you all can see it. Sorry, I cannot see anything on the screen. I'm gonna have to rotate it. Sorry, members of the public who are here. Hopefully it's a little easier to see. So this first one, as you can see, is like a landscaped option. It's very straight. There is space in the median portion itself. Right here. The second option is similar landscaped median option, but it has sloped sides here. And as you can see, there's individuals in the median working on the landscaping. That was one of the concerns that was brought up about this type of median, is the maintenance of it. how is it going to be maintained, who's going to be maintained, and how do you keep the individuals maintaining it safe, especially on such a high speed roadway as to where this is going to be going. Because we don't want to put anything in that makes the situation worse.
Probably guess how it's going to be maintained by looking at the median that's out there now.
So I have no comment on that.
I guess if I could ask a question.
No, please, yeah.
Yeah, I think the example from Spenard is not a median. It's separating a non-motorized pathway from the road. But it seems like in this proposal, we'd be proposing it as a median. So it might, is that true, or am I misunderstanding?
I think the recommendation from the TAC is, instead of doing the median itself, is to look at adding in that barrier on either side of the roadway, so the north and the south side, between the sidewalk and the roadway. Now, at the TAC, it was recognized that there is space constraints on the southern side, and the northern side has a lot more room. So that would have to be looked at as part of that.
Mr. Littlefield, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Quick question. If you put the exterior medians out there like you had on Spenard, as a maintenance aspect, you're making this road be hauled every time it snows or you'll lose a lane. So I'm just a little concerned, especially on the south side. There's no place to put the snow. You got a median, you got just enough sidewalk for pedestrian to walk. So if you put a barrier up there, there's nowhere for the snow to go. So I'm a little concerned about this. The one in the middle would keep the people from crossing back and forth. That's what it originally was intended to do. I believe we need to protect the safety of the pedestrians on the outside, but how do you do that?
That was a concern raised to the TAC as well.
Appreciate that insight. Any other comments, questions? I had just a couple, Anna, but and kind of along the same lines of Mr. Littlefield's question, have these, I guess, first of all, there's not a transportation engineer on this board, so I want to make sure that we understand that, licensed experts are going to be making these decisions. We're looking at what, a half a dozen, 7 or 8 alternatives here. Are there potential for any other alternatives? Number one, I guess, and number two would be, have all these options been vetted through a scoping process with our maintenance group or our right-of-way group or anything like that?
Thank you, Chair. So the first question regarding the options, these were options that were referenced in the crash mitigation report that was cited for the HSIP funding as a crash reduction measure. So we're trying to stick as close to that report that gives a recommendation on treatment for this very type of crash problem. And so there were other options in that report. I will say that they're less attractive, and these are probably the most attractive, although I'm not a landscape architect, but just knowing what we went through for Minnesota. And so those are, I'd like to just kind of focus on the physical wall type and not necessarily the landscaping. Like I said at the TAC meeting, maintenance is a concern, and so I don't want to make a promise that landscaping is going to be part of the final design. The other thing, like Mr. Littlefield mentioned, snow storage and removal is a concern with a Jersey barrier type situation. There is ample right-of-way on the north side to maybe offer some snow storage in between a Jersey barrier connected route, but when you only offer it on one side, you're still likely going to have people try and cross. And so during the TAC presentation, I emphasized that this is a treatment, it's not a complete solution. This is a very problematic issue across the country for couplets and high-speed roadways that also have non-motorized facilities adjacent to it. So we need to recognize this is not going to be foolproof, and we will have likely people still try to cross. It's a long distance between the two signalized intersections. And so we're trying to mitigate it and slow down vehicles as well with some vertical enhanced vertical separation in the middle. I'm also going to be looking at reducing the speed limit in the area as well as, and then when you add lighting and the other treatments to make it more enticing to actually cross at the signalized intersections, we're hoping that is all treatments that improve the likelihood of people using that. If we were to funnel people, so to speak, by prohibiting them walking along the north side, we would still likely get people walking on the south side. And so there's a chance that people will try to cross and then be prevented by a Jersey barrier on the north side. So then they'd likely have to cross back. It's just, lots of scenarios, and we're dealing with, human beings trying to make a choice. So it's definitely not an ideal situation.
Yeah. So for clarity, I guess the objective is similar to the Minnesota wall in that we're trying to stop that path. We're trying to direct pedestrians to established controlled crossings.
Correct.
There probably is no good way, Anna, I'm just kind of curious. I think I know generally where the pedestrians are coming from and going to, but is there any good way to determine that, just to see? I mean, I think we were talking about that gas station being the primary place that people are going, but we don't know that for sure, or do we know that for sure? Do they cross to go somewhere else, or question?
No, it's a fair question. I mean, I think that gets to the point of the land use discussion and why are people crossing here? I think you're right. The Holiday Station is likely the draw. There aren't grocery stores and other kind of quickie marts in other locations in this section of town. Staff and I went out to the site. We did see some well-worn paths crossing up through the park's land. So that after looking at the CIP list again from Fairview Community Council, it's clear that trying to encourage people to actually get to Fifth Avenue closer to Carluck intersection is likely also to have an improvement because if they can't access in the mid block from that Parks Department area, then they likely will use a signalized intersection or be closer to an area that that drivers are likely to expect them. So it is similar to the Minnesota, and they were nominated at the same time.
I think that's all my questions.
I have one more question.
Ms. Zolotel.
How time sensitive is this? If the Fairview Community Council hasn't had a chance to weigh in, do you need our guidance now, or could it wait a month?
Noah King, I know, is online and he's the project manager. And sorry to put you on the spot, Noah, if you have an idea of the timeline that you're working with for your environmental document.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, Noah King, DOT Traffic Design Project Manager. I think, yeah, we could definitely wait a month or two to get feedback from the community councils first. We have our environmental document complete, and we're working on coordinating the design elements and the Merrill Field lighting elements now. So,
any other questions? Not hearing any from the committee. Is there any questions, comments from the public? Not seeing any. What's the will of the committee?
Move to postpone to the October policy committee meeting so that the Fairview Community Council can weigh in on options A through G plus the TAC recommendation.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Zolotel, seconded by Mr. Littlefield, and the motion is to delay. Are we going to have an October meeting?
We may not have an October meeting.
The next policy committee meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Do I hear any objections, I guess? No, I'm not hearing it. I guess we can table it until the next policy committee. On to next item, which is 5C. The DOT&PF STIP comment response letter. Assume you have a presentation.
Yeah, just a quick overview of this. So as you remember, we did submit comments to DOT regarding the STIP amendment number 1. DOT responded to those comments. You'll find them attached in this document. However, along with that, there was a letter with some additional requests for AMATS that staff wanted to bring forward to get direction from the TAC and PC on. The first 4 are related to the TIP, some minor changes to the TIP document itself, correcting some slight errors that we had in there, or providing more clarity on carry forward sources of funding, or a pretty big one is show prior year obligations from before the current TIP. So this was a corrective action the STIP got as well. When FHWA says entire total project cost, they mean prior year obligations, what you have in your fiscal year of the TIP or STIP, and then future year anticipated amounts. It's actually kind of a benefit overall, because when we look at doing amendments, it's supposed to be based on the total project cost. And if you start adding in the prior year obligations, it would include that amount in there. There are some projects that we're going to have some interesting work on, because they've been projects that have been in the TIP for a very long time. So we're going to have to do our best to get that information. And it may actually trigger us to make some changes to our TIP, where we start putting projects in just for the 4 years of the TIP. So instead of having a generic name of like implement projects, it's implement projects from 2023 to 2026. So then you have a cutoff time to be like, here's when we've been implementing projects or something like that. We gotta work all that out as part of it. But the recommendation from the TAC and staff is to include these first 4 into the next TIP amendment, which we hope to start in the next few months, as they're all pretty minor changes to be made. Then there was a 5th comment added in regarding the operating agreement, saying, please initiate a review and update the current agreement to be reflective of the current operations of the organization and ensure it is in alignment with state statutes and regulations. Part of that agreement also said it looks like the agreement hasn't been updated since 2002, or a comprehensive update since 2002. Staff provided information in this memo that the operating agreement is periodically reviewed and updated, and you can see the dates from 2010 to 2023, or the years, sorry, of when it was updated. You can also find it on the operating agreement itself in the footer, where it'll tell you when it was last approved by the policy committee. We do not have to get our operating agreement re-signed every time we make a change, as there is a clause in there that says amendments are approved by the policy committee. So that's what's been happening over the years. As related to the state statutes and regulations, staff's not aware of any applicable state statutes or regulations that also meet federal requirements and regulations in which the AMATS operating agreement is not in alignment with. If DOT is able to provide a list, that would be helpful. TAC reviewed these items and recommended approval of 1 through 4, and then requested that DOT provide a list for the 5th one regarding our operating agreement. It is before you for action today. Thank you.
Darren, are there any comments or questions from the committee? Not seeing any. I think I have a couple. We've talked about it, Aaron, that if you look at that document online, it looks like a document that was executed in 2002. There's no indication to show that we have 6 or 8 updates. So it might have value to, I don't know, update that somehow to indicate that it's been updated that many times. So is that a periodic? Do you periodically look at that agreement and make those updates, or what prompts those updates that we've made in the past, you know?
Well, one of the latest ones, the 2023 one, was actually updating it to correctly reflect the membership on the TAC, because there was an adjustment to add, we had the energy and efficiency coordinator from DOT, or from the municipality of Anchorage on there. That position, that person went away, and under the previous administration, it looks like that position was never refilled. So there was a change to add Parks and Rec to the TAC representation as part of that. For example, 2019, I think actually might have been the updates to reflect changes regarding the TIP amendment process, because it was not in compliance with federal regulations. And so we're required to update it. So what you see in the operating agreement now reflects current Title 23 requirements of when an amendment is triggered or when an admin mod is triggered. So those are the kind of changes we do. And it can happen because something, we get a certification review and they say, hey, this isn't correct, it needs to be done. Or they reach out to us from FHWA or any of our partners, say, we have some concerns about this, is this correct or not? Typically, we'll get some kind of response from somebody, or it's staff just periodically reviewing it and bringing recommended changes to the policy committee.
And I can't speak to all the regulations or statutes that are on the list, but I will have our Attorney General put together a list of those statutes and regulations that they're referring to. I think one that I can think of is that the makeup of this body is not per statute. But I guess beyond that, my thought is, I don't know, I'd like to take a look at the TIP process, the TIP amendment process, to see if, I know that you put some work into that, but I'd like to see if we can build some efficiency into that. And I don't know, I think just to generally take a look at the agreement and maybe make a recommendation if there's any changes that we should make. I'm not saying that we necessarily have to make those changes, but that's my stream of consciousness on that.
So regarding the makeup of the policy committee, there was actually a lawsuit filed regarding that one, and the courts found that that is not valid if it forces a redesignation of the policy committee. And I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but it has to be a cooperative agreement between the parties on if there is going to be a change to the policy committee makeup.
Sure.
And that's done through the operating agreement itself.
So that's to say that we don't have to follow that statute as the MPO, but we could.
You could.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, comments?
On your right.
Oh, sorry.
Are you volunteering to spearhead that project?
Which project?
Taking a look at the operating agreement? I mean, I think that's like part of it,
yeah.
because if we want to take these things
You know,
up, we're gonna
I
have
think-
to have someone take the
Yes.
helm.
Yes, I think that, I guess for transparency, I think there's some concerns that the DOT has with the operating agreement. But yeah, so we can.
Yeah, I think what two of us can talk offline and kind of look at it together.
Sure.
Not within the scope of meeting that, so, just wanting, because I think it's gonna be some pre-work before we come back, and if we're going to take a look, then we should know who's gonna do it.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Any other questions, comments? Sorry.
Do you have any ideas you want to preview with us in terms of streamlining or changes?
Not right now. No, I can't think of anything specific, but our attorneys have taken a look at it and have some concerns. Some things that we think that we want to clarify, but like I said, I'm not prepared to talk about specifics. I'd tell you if I could remember, but I can't. So, any other questions? How about from the public? Any questions or comments on this agenda? Not seeing, hearing any. Do I hear a motion? Do you want to review that?
Do it
The action.
through.
On the very bottom.
Well, the action requested is the AMATS staff and technical advisory committee recommend the policy committee review and approve recommendations for number 1 through 5. And I believe the technical advisory committee, well, said that, but they would just want a clarification on number 5, right?
They didn't actually recommend opening the operating agreement. They asked that DOT provide a list of the state statutes that we're not in compliance with
Okay.
or out of alignment with.
Does that help your motion?
Move to approve.
Go ahead. Second. Anybody opposed? Not hearing anybody. It's,
Who was the second?
sorry, Mr. Littlefield.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Sorry.
On to action item 5D, which is the easiest one we have. It's a letter of support for Culvert AOP grant application. I do have a presentation there.
Just real quick, it's another letter of support. DOT, I want to thank DOT. They got it to us on time to be on the agenda for both the TAC and the PC. So I really appreciate Mark Eisenman's help on that. So DOT is partnering with Native Village of Eklutna on a project to work on some fish culvert passages, culverts. You'll actually see in the grant application itself was added in online if you would like to take a look at that. It shows the location and everything like that, including the cost. There's a pretty big benefit here. Partnering with the Native Village of Eklutna allows the project to be 100% federally funded. So DOT is doing a lot to work with its partners to get the most bang out of the buck. Technical Advisory Committee reviewed this item, and staff and the TAC are both recommending approval. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
I'll just echo Aaron's thanks. Yeah, this is great. Very exciting to be collaborating with the Native Village of Eglutna. And thanks, DOT.
And I'll just mention that AOP stands for Aquatic Organism Passage. So I assume it's a salmon. Any comments or questions from the public? Not seeing any. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Mr. Olds online. Any objections to approving the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. On to item 5E, the DOT&PF and MPO 3C process document. Bet you have a presentation.
I do. Okay, so this is back before you. So as you remember, this did come before you all at your June meeting. So just real quick, as part of the STIP approval, there was tier 2 corrective actions, tier 1 corrective actions, and then tier 2. Tier 1 requested that there be some work, tier 2 requested that there be some work done by DOT to develop a 3C process document. The 3C is continuing, comprehensive, and cooperative. It's basically what drives the transportation project within the MPO boundary. So this document was put together by DOT in coordination with the MPO staff and also getting policy committee to review it to outline how DOT implements the 3C process or works with the MPOs on the 3C process for the specific items that are listed in here. So as part of the certification, the air quality conformity, the TIP, MTP, PWP, and then most notably at the end is the STIP portion. So a lot of work has gone into this, and I want to thank DOT for it. There's been a lot of back and forth, and I think it's a very, very good starting point. Please remember, this is a living document, so the idea here is to periodically be reviewing it and updating it, refining things if they work or don't work. There are 2 items that I want to point out to you that are included in here that I think are fairly substantial. The first is under the STIP development. If you want to scroll down to it's on page 4 of the PDF under STIP development and amendments. It's under data collection and initial planning. So that first solid point down there after that empty point, there's no numbering. So that would be my recommendation, is put some numbering on here. DOT will solicit nominations of projects for inclusion in the STIP from MPOs in accordance with the direction given in 17 AAC 05160. MPOs will be given 30 days to submit nominations. Any comments regarding evaluation criteria? This is a pretty significant change. I was talking with Craig, the previous director, and he was never really given this opportunity while he was the director for AMATS to have the MPO submit nominations as part of the STIP development process. So this would be a pretty significant change for the MPOs. And I want to make sure we're aware of it so we don't miss the opportunity to nominate projects. Now, this is not for nominations for STIP or TIP funding of AMATS. This would be for nominations for any funding that is shown in the STIP. And as you'll note, there's no limitation on that it's within the MPO's boundary that a nomination occurs. So just want to point that out to everybody. And then a little further down on that page, if you want to scroll to the bottom of that page, look, there's another thing. Yeah, that last open bullet there. It talks about scoring and ranking of projects, and they'll use a project evaluation board, PEB. The MPO will be invited to participate when applicable and will be given notice per the Alaska Administrative Code. This is also something I've never heard of being done before, where the MPO is invited to participate on the PEB. What this means is you, as the MPO, will need to make a decision on who you would like to participate on this PEB process when the invitation comes out. So just be a heads up on there. When we get that information, we'll know. It originally said the policy committee chair. However, no offense, chair, you're a wonderful guy, but you do have a conflict of interest as the Central Region Director. I believe you participate already on this project evaluation board. So they changed this item to be more flexible for the MPO to decide who they would like to send. It originally also had me as the director attending, but I didn't feel that was appropriate for me to go because I cannot speak for you as the policy committee. So unless you say otherwise, of course. So there's a lot in here. I'm really excited for what this means as we move forward. And it's before you today for any kind of final comments that you would like to provide to DOT. Just as a reminder, AMATS does not approve this. This is a DOT policy, but they're giving us an opportunity to coordinate with them and provide them any additional changes we would like to see. They may not be addressed right now, but they can be looked at the next update cycle. That's all I had. Thank you.
Questions from the committee, Ms. Zolotel?
Yeah, down on page 6, other joint planning efforts. I wanted to get a little bit more into those, partly because it says an LRTP. And the municipality appropriated money and is working on a separate long-range transportation. I don't call it a plan, we call it something else. Strategy, thank you. Basically an LRTP. And so I'm kind of curious what that looks like. The whole point of doing a long-range transportation strategy was to focus on our own land use and municipal roads. And so I'm kind of planning efforts with potential impacts to the MPO. Well, the MPO is the municipality, will be coordinated with the MPOs. So would this be kind of like contemplated an opposite effect where it comes to the PC to comment on prior to then going to the assembly? Like, because it's kind of flopped now. So I'm kind of curious just how it would play out.
So this is for the state's long-range transportation.
Oh, okay.
We already have process in place for our MTP, for example. And so this is explaining that when the state does an LRTP update, long-range transportation plan update, which is a little different than ours because they don't have to have fiscally constrained. They can if they want, but they don't have to. They don't have to have projects in there, I believe, but they can choose to. So it's up to them to flesh that all out. And they're saying that they will provide notice to the MPO to participate on that development cycle. Staff has already been participating on prior LRTP updates. This is more formalizing it in a document.
Okay, so it's not the other way. It's still the same way. Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Please, Mr. Downey.
I'll say one, thanks. I think in general, agree with Aaron, the direction of this document feels absolutely we're headed in the right direction. Glad to be collaborating more. I will be slightly grumpy. This document is very hard to read. And I think we need, especially given how much confusion there's been about the STIP and the TIP and what happens first and who approves what, I think we need a really clear, plain language, plain English version of this document, especially if this is creating sort of legal obligations between the state and the MPO. Anyway, they're just like a lot of acronyms, a lot of passive voice, a lot of, not sorry to be grumpy about the language, but yeah, it would be nice, I think, for the public to be able to understand this a little bit better. Maybe there's a more accessible version.
Any other questions?
Just real quick one through the chair. You said this is a living document and reviewed, and who gets to review?
DOT would initiate the review and they would invite the MPOs to participate on this. Since this is while it's a DOT policy, it's a DOT policy involving the MPOs and how they participate with the MPOs. So they would, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody from DOT, they would invite the MPOs to participate in that updating process.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a general planning question, I guess. So the state's LRTP, is there a requirement how they would incorporate or otherwise say an LRT strategy, LRTS? Is there a requirement for the LRTP to consider that or incorporate it? Or yeah, I thought that was the answer. And I'm getting head nods from planners.
Yes, and it's a pretty common practice for federally required documents to consider local documents that are out there or the local perspective on things when they develop a long range plan or other things like that. It's like what we do with the MTP.
But if I go follow up.
Please, Mr. Ben.
So is that, for example, would that mean, does this document change the relationship, say, between our design criteria manual and using that to sort of inform state projects within the the MPO. No, that's not what's happening.
No, that would be a separate one. This is more really like the planning process prior to getting to the design criteria portion. So like development of the STIP, basically how are projects going to be funded? And then when you get to the part where they're funded and they do design and everything, there's separate stuff for that.
Any other questions? How about from the public? Any questions or comments from the public? Not seeing any. I'm going to reread the action for us here.
The action is for recommend the policy committee review the 3C process document and provide any comments to DOT. TAC and staff didn't have any additional comments at this time.
That help with the motion?
We just move to accept the document, because I don't know that we're approving anything.
No.
So we can move to accept.
Yes.
Accept it.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Zelatel, seconded by Mr. Littlefield. Do you hear any objections to accepting the 3C process document? I'm not hearing any, so I guess the motion is approved, I'll say. This our last action item on the agenda is the policy committee agendas review. You have a presentation there?
I don't actually have a presentation. I would have to defer to you, Chair,
Sure.
to talk about this, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, and see if we had like an agenda review, this item might not be on the agenda. I was just saying that, we just started that new MPO in the Valley, and I misspoke a little bit, is that we get a kind of a preview of the TAC agenda and just she gives us a couple days just to take a look at it and see if we would like to add anything or change anything. And then, of course, the policy committee board in that case agenda is dictated by what the technical advisory committee does. So that was my ask, was could you give us a couple days to look at a draft before you publicly post it?
For the PC agenda or the TAC?
Well,
agenda?
the TAC, because I think that kind of dictates what the policy agenda is going to be.
Yeah, I can kind of flesh this out a little and explain kind of what our process is, and then you guys tell me what you would like. So we set the TAC agenda. We're typically working on it up to the day of posting it, because people like to provide last minute changes to the agenda or additions to it. So we can get you a draft version prior to it being posted if you'd like it a week in advance. We sometimes don't even have the agenda set a week in advance of posting it because we're busy working on it. We can provide you something. I guess the one flashing thing that I heard from your comment is changes to it. How do I as staff handle if policy committee members have different opinions on items that are supposed to be on the agenda prior to us posting it? Say one member asks for something to be on there and then another member wants it off. What am I supposed to do in that regard? Right now, we just add everything to the agenda, and then you all, the TAC and the PC, take care of it at the beginning of the meeting, and you determine what's on the agenda. I'm uncomfortable being put in the middle of disagreement between members because I can't tell you what to do. And I will just clarify, the PC agenda is not necessarily dictated by the TAC. More than likely what you see on the TAC will be on the PC, but stuff is added. And I'm just saying that for clarification because I don't want people to think that you can't make changes to the agenda, because I know that may be a question that comes up. So that's my only fear of what limits do you want placed on changes to the agendas when they're sent to you?
And like I said, I'm not passionate about this, and I'm going to talk to Elise and see what she would do in that same case. So I don't want to make you uncomfortable. But
what we have been doing, what we have done in the past is we've provided the TAC agenda as soon as it's posted to the policy committee, so you at least can know what's on there and what might be on the PC agenda. We can. Things have been a little tight around AMATS and we've fallen out of doing that, but we can work on focusing that as a primary thing if that solves the concern. To get that to you guys, it'd be after it's or when it's posted, just because we may not have an agenda ready until it's posted, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. there a question? Ms.
Oh,
Solotaroff?
there's a couple of thoughts. One, Aaron, the chair generally gets to set the agenda as the power of the chair. So there you go. And two, as long as we continue to observe Robert's rules, any member can move to add something to the agenda. If there's some openness to doing that, any one member should possibly just bring it to the chair and see if the chair will add it early. Or two, we can do it in the moment, but knowing that some of that needs some spin up time if we're expecting a presentation. So I think we have a lot of mechanisms to be real flexible with the agenda that are built into the processes that exist, just based on the fact that we observe Robert's rules generally, and our agenda comes out pretty well in advance. I don't know, being an assembly member who gets an addendum on a Friday to turn around and vote on hundreds of items on a Tuesday, this is a lot of advance notice, so.
Any other comments or questions?
Am I hearing you? So Sean, you were thinking, or sorry, Mr. Holland, you were thinking you'd like maybe some advance notice of the TAC agenda in order to get items on that so that it can get considered by the TAC before we consider it?
Yeah, that was, and again, I modeled that after what we get in that other MPO. I'm not real passionate about it.
Yeah, I'm thinking, for example, of just the boundary conversation, right? You brought it up at our last meeting. And then we had to send it to the TAC for them to consider, and now we're looking at it again. So maybe that's sort of the problem we're trying to solve here. That's unfair.
Yeah, I think that sounds fair.
Yeah.
Excuse me, just point of clarification too on the Sonatel. If you add action items at the meeting, you have to provide notice to the public for action items. You can't just add them right at the meeting that I'm aware of. It has to give them enough time to attend and.
Yeah, we don't usually add action items. It's usually informational items.
Okay.
That's been the practice, but
Okay.
yeah.
And that would be the same case for the technical advisory committee. So it may be more problem than it's worth. Like I said, if we had that opportunity, I probably would have nixed that from the agenda, but just had that conversation. But any other questions for? No.
If I think to build on Ms. Altel's comments, I think I agree. As the chair, the agenda is yours. And I like the idea of getting some advance notice before the TAC so we can set the agenda and maybe going through you to get items on the agenda. And if you say no, and we really are passionate about it, then we can always make a motion. But if that process makes sense to you,
I think that's it.
yeah. But maybe Aaron has additional thoughts.
I'll clarify, historically, the chair has not set the agendas for the PC and the TAC. So it's always been staff based on what people send to us, and we put the agenda and then let you all vote on it. That way it keeps it a neutral ground. So if there is a desire to change that, then please let me know and we will work on that. I think staff can easily try and provide something in advance of the TAC agenda being posted, to at least give you a heads up on what's anticipated to be looked at. So you can know, or if there's something else that you would like to add. Anybody at any point is free to send an email and say, add this to the agenda, and it is added, as long as it's appropriate, not something nasty. And so, yeah, I think I understand where you're coming from, Chair. So I think we'll try and work on something and see what we can get, recognizing we may need some trial and error to figure it out.
And I don't know that it has, maybe it does have to be formal. I don't know that it has to be formal, but
Okay.
do we need a motion or can we just?
I would like a motion just so I can have it set in stone that this is what you would like staff to start doing. And so we can go back and say, what was the idea behind the policy committee? Because I'd hate to, like, a year from now be like, what were we doing? What were we thinking at that point?
Yeah.
So if possible, a motion would be appreciated.
I guess prior to that, no more questions, comments from the committee. Any from the public? Hearing none. Your motion.
Move to postpone the item indefinitely.
Second.
There. Moved by Ms. Zelatel, seconded by Mr. Littlefield. Anybody object? I guess I'd probably be the one that would object, but I'm not passionate about it. Okay. On to, that was the last action item?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Agenda item 6A is Alaska's Roadway Behavior Symposium. Have a presentation on that.
I'll actually go ahead and do A and B together, just to keep it quick for you all. So this was put on the agenda just to try and get the word out as best as possible. DOT put on these awesome opportunities for partners and the public and organizations to come and talk to them about safety. And so this week, Monday and Tuesday, there was a safety symposium held where different groups talked about learned behaviors and improvements that can be done to help with behaviors. And then yesterday, there was a partner in safety workshop done at the Lusac Library in the afternoon, 3:30 to 6:30. And then there was a focus group in the middle of the day there that was pretty cool to attend. At the meeting, it was admitted that these weren't as well attended as they had hoped. And a lot of that might have been done to getting the information out, and they recognized it and they owned up to the fact that they need to do better in the future. So I understand there's concerns around safety, and I as AMATS staff will help to get out the word as much as possible when these kind of events occur. They were good events, and we're given an opportunity for those who showed up to provide feedback on safety concerns in the community. So just from AMATS staff perspective, thank you for putting these on, and we look forward to helping in the future. Thank you.
That's the presentation.
That's it for those two items.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Zelatel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I gave you a heads up before the meeting, so this is very timely. I think road safety is paramount right now. We have had a number of pedestrian deaths. We are on track right now with approximately 3 deaths per 100,000 to be one of the most dangerous cities in America. That's not a distinction I want to see. And we know that the shoulder season in particular, when the light starts to get low and it's raining conditions, are dangerous. But we also have tools that we know work, whether it's what I fondly call HSIP lighting, but this enhanced lighting that's been installed over in the Tudor area. Also reducing speeds. I have tons of data about the effects of reducing speeds. So I'd really like to get moving on urban safety corridors so that we can temporarily reduce speeds based on conditions. Additionally, I think it's really, really important. Last year, about this time, the governor declared Alaska pedestrian crashes are 100% preventable and declared October Pedestrian Safety Month. And we are on track to do worse than last year. It was 11 pedestrians were killed in collisions in 2023. And that was statewide data, and 13 in 2022. So Anchorage really needs to take action. And I think that action has to be cooperative between the municipality and DOT. We need to work together. I'm going to be having a similar conversation with the administration and probably a call to action at our next meeting so that we can be actually putting some timelines on this. I understand that most of the projects we discuss here at the policy committee take time because of the types of fund sources, but the time to act we're beyond the time to act, in my opinion. And I understand pedestrian deaths are complicated, but once they start happening, I'm actually outraged that there's not enough outrage. We have had in our community deaths in other fashions, like officer-involved shootings, and there we're looking at wholesale revamps of departments, but here there just seems to be no action. And I don't know if it's because we have 2 big entities that need to take action together or what it is, but I think we have ready solutions that we know can work. We just have to figure out how to be able to move them quickly. And moving things quickly in the transportation world, I know is a bit of an anachronism, but we've got to have some agility and some flexibility. So I really wanted to raise that here today. I was going to do it at member comments, but this seemed to be a very appropriate time to do this. So I want to also offer time to look at these issues and come up with solutions. I think this is a very important thing. I will make time for this because we have a city where we have a decent number of pedestrians and everyone deserves to be safe on our streets. So with that, I'll leave it at that. I'm sure we'll have more conversation, but I hope we go beyond conversation and into action.
Sure. And if I can, I guess I'd say that we're in agreement, that we do need to take, I would say, immediate action. And I think Anna might be still online, but we've been talking about this over the last 2 weeks because we had, I think, 4 fatalities within the municipality in 1 week. Some things that we're trying to take a look at immediately are we're going to evaluate speed limits on every corridor that's listed in the AMATS safety plan, as well as the state highway safety plan and the vulnerable users plan, VRU. I'm not sure exactly what that stands for, but that's going to requires us to work with the city on that, and it also requires some public involvement, meetings to community councils and things like that. You know, and to be effective, you can't. I mean, just arbitrarily lowering speed limits isn't effective because you won't get compliance, but we're thinking that we have some tools that we can use, whether it's, and I'm going to speak out of turn because I'm not sure if this will work, but things like potentially signal timing. Could we slow down the signal timing so that if you're driving faster than the speed limit, if we set it to 35, that you have to stop at each light? And that may work on some facilities, but again, not my area of expertise, just an idea that I had. The other thing that we're going to do is evaluate reducing posted speed limits to no higher than 35 in corridors that have multimodal facilities in transit. Possibly provide some speed feedback signs. And I think very important is that we talked to our public involvement, our comms group yesterday about putting together a public education campaign for people to drive with care. You know, just kind of communicate that speeding kills. The tinted windows is a very common factor in those fatalities, which was surprising to me a little bit. But things like that, more expensive fines. Just talk about just education as far as don't block the crosswalks. Keep an eye if you're turning right on red. Just keep an eye out for pedestrians. So we're putting together an immediate action plan. Those things take months, but I also think that if we set a Vision Zero goal, a goal for no pedestrian or no fatalities, we got to do something about it, right? Or it's not a real goal. And so we're going to try to pick off some of that low hanging fruit here immediately in the next few months. Anyway, that's all I got on that.
Thank you. I think it's, I appreciate that response because I think it's like a triangle of what you need. You need action, you need education, and you need enforcement. And I think I heard all 3 of those things. And I think particularly the enforcement piece is going to require partnership with the municipality. In addition, we can be great partners in the education. So I really appreciate that and look forward to seeing your action plan, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it's a sense of urgency. And you know, Anna has already met with APD on, I don't know how many, but several of the sites of those fatalities to understand what the circumstances were there. And yeah, so I think we need to have some action. I want to call you Mr. Graham. I know your name. So
my kids used to call me. Anyway, yeah, I think I was also, like the members all told, was going to make comments during the later portion, but it seems appropriate now. And I'll echo the thanks. I'm glad you all have to see DOT have a specific immediate plan is really heartening and very eager to collaborate on making that happen. And whatever we can do to help and wherever we can support, I think very eager to collaborate on that. I think, you know, and also I think it's just, we take pedestrian deaths, we take deaths on our road for granted. We just sort of assume that it's going to happen and we don't think about it in the same way as we do think about other causes of death. And I think that needs to change. And I think in the past, there's often been sort of this fuzzy prioritization in terms of road design between speed and safety, and they sort of get treated as co-equal, or perhaps even speed has been prioritized over safety. I think at this body and also in my role with the Muni, I think we're going to take really seriously putting safety ahead of speed and making that a really conscious choice moving forward. As a priority used to be only singular. You didn't used to be able to have 2 priorities. And I think safety needs to be our priority. You know, I think the 5 deaths in the last week or so were on DOT roads, but we know it's not only DOT roads, and we need to be good partners as well. I do think when we're looking at safety in the municipality, we need to be really serious about the design piece and about, I think oftentimes things like road widening and road straightening have been described as safety improvements. I think it's clear that these very wide, very straight roads are where a lot of folks are dying. So we need to, I think, reconsider that assumption. And we need state funding for and grid roads to improve the roads we are here. So that's our job, right, as AMATS, is to bring that funding in. So, and also I think, even building on some of the previous points, eager to figure out how we can be nimbler and act more quickly, especially when people are dying. And, studies like the ones we approved at our last meeting are important and we should continue to do them, but we should also take immediate action to stop people from dying this winter. Yeah.
I should caveat that I'll promise what I can promise, and that's, I'll promise that we'll do those evaluations. I don't know what the outcome will be. There is a process that we have to go through. Well, we can expedite that. And, so that's my promise. Are there any other comments from the committee? No. Anything from the public? Not seeing any.
Sean, sorry, I didn't want to comment during this time. So AMATS staff was actually invited to participate, looking at the locations for the 4 deaths that happened. We went to all 4 sites and discussed it. And it was really hard to watch the videos of the fatalities and see the last moments of those people's lives play out in front of you. So it kind of hit really hard. But AMATS staff is here to help. We have a non-motorized safety campaign that is currently underway where we're partnering with the Center for Safe Alaskans. So if there's any way that can be used to help with some additional education, I know that they are willing and ready. There'll probably be a funding request for the next TIP amendment to add more funding to that education campaign. They've had a lot of outreach efforts and they're available for additional things. And if there's other things that are needed for AMATS staff to help with funding or other things, just let us know. And with your guys' approval, of course, we will assist where possible. I do want to thank DOT for inviting AMATS and the municipal staff to attend those reviews of those locations, as it was pretty eye-opening to see, because we often kind of get lost in our planning world, and when you're out there in real life, it's a whole different thing. So yeah, thank you.
On to the next item is 6C, which is MTP Amendment number 1 work session.
Yes, I was just going to bring up to everybody's heads up. Well, last meeting we talked about possibly needing an MTP amendment. And it sounded like we needed more discussion for everybody to kind of talk about what changes, if any, needed to be made. And so the idea staff was going to put out here and see if everybody's okay with it, is to try and have a work session in October in lieu of our regular meetings, to get the PC and TAC together, to invite the Safer Seward Highway folks to give a quick update on that project and talk about it, because I think there were some questions the committee members had regarding that project. So give them an opportunity to ask those questions and get some feedback, and then get some direction from the policy committee on how staff should approach the MTP amendment. We'd like to try and get the amendment started at the same time as the TIP amendment itself, so they can flow together and we have no delays in the process. So unless you guys say otherwise, the plan was to send out a doodle poll and see what time worked best in October to have that work session. I will let you know that things are kind of running fast right now. We may end up having to push that to November just because of short staffing and availability of staff for that work session. So we're trying to figure it out as quick as we can. That's all I had. Thank you.
We're on to, are there any, I guess any questions from the committee for Aaron?
Yeah, really quick. If you try to put us any other time than in the PC meeting that already exists, it's really unworkable in October because we have our budget process happening.
Okay.
And also if you do put us in the policy time, if you could maybe start at 1:15, could we leave the budget and finance committee early to get here? That'd be real great.
We may not have it. I'm actually out of town
Okay.
on a cruise during the policy
good.
committee, so I'm needing some time away. So that's why we were thinking, would November work better for everybody? I know that's starting to get into the holiday season.
It's nothing urgent. Well, the MTP update.
Yeah,
Urgent.
it's just the amendment for changes for the Safer Seward Highway project, and then that'll feed into the TIP amendment itself. So we'll need to do them at the same time.
Could we do anything sort of like asynchronously before? I mean, November seems fine to me. Could we do anything to like surface issues or have living documents where people are sharing ideas in advance, or is that not part of the process?
I guess the big thing I would have is if you guys have specific direct questions regarding like the Safer Seward Highway, for example, it'd be good to get those early and provide them, since DOT will be the one to ask about those. Or if you have questions about the process, I can provide that to you. Aside from that, it's really just sitting down and getting what the PC wants us to do in terms of that amendment.
Any other questions for Aaron? Any from the public? Not seeing any. Agenda item number 7 is committee comments. Does the committee have any comments to add today? I'm not seeing any. Agenda item number 8 is public comments. Are there any comments from the public?
We do actually have a comment from a member, Mark Eisenman.
Hi, this is Mark Eisman, Anchorage Area Planner. Just one comment I want to say thank you guys for the letter of support for the Culvert grant application. Aaron, I just need it kind of timely if possible. We have a deadline on Monday afternoon for upload, so just something to keep in mind. If you can give that to me sooner than later, it'd be great.
I'll get it to you today.
Awesome, perfect.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Aaron. Anybody else? Not seeing anybody else. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Zelatel, seconded by
Again,
Mr. Linfield. I know I'm not going to hear any objections. So the meeting is adjourned at, I have 2:17.